Do you know what makes you stand out amongst everyone else around you? Can you share it with others in a powerful and compelling way that helps you achieve your career and personal goals? Our guest, Jannette Anderson of Maturepreneur World, is known as the Why Whisperer and is sharing her transformative tips and process to help you capture and convey your story to create clarity, advocacy, and differentiation. You'll hear tips and stories around why this question is so critical for you to be able to answer, and 3 ways to gain clarity around your why. And lastly, how to use that clarity in your attraction and persuasion efforts. You will walk away with excitement, energy, and confidence that you can stand out in any room and achieve your business and personal goals. So stay with us.
Welcome to Shedding the Corporate Bitch, the podcast that transforms today's managers into tomorrow's powerhouse leaders. Your host, Bernadette Boas, executive coach and author, brings you into a world where the corporate grind meets personal growth and success in each and every episode. With more than 25 years in corporate trenches, Bernadette's own journey from being dismissed as a tyrant boss to becoming a sought-after leadership coach and speaker illustrates the very essence of transformation that she now inspires in others with her tips, strategies, and stories. So, if you're ready to shed the bitches of fear and insecurity, ditch the imposter syndrome, and step into the role of the powerhouse leader you were born to be, this podcast is for you. Let's do this.
Jannette, how are you? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, I am awesome, and I'm awesomely grateful to be here, Bernadette.
I'm thrilled that you're here as well. And I'm very excited to talk about this subject and more so about how you are a why whisperer. And we will get into that. But before we do, I love our listeners and viewers to get to know the individuals that we're talking to. So could you share with us a little bit about Jannette?
Okay, well, there's a bunch of things that I could tell you, but I think I came out of the womb entrepreneurial. I'm pretty sure I was carrying a briefcase, which my mother did not appreciate. I had my very first business when I was 5 because I wanted to get the book Heidi and we were poor. My mom yelled at me and said, "No, can't afford it." And I had heard that a lot growing up, Bernadette, so it didn't really surprise me. But the thing about kids is we don't complicate things like we do when we get older. And so I thought, no money, get money. Easy, right? Solution. So how do I get money? Well, I had seen someone in our housing tenement have a garage sale a little while before. So I thought, okay, I'll have a business and I'll get money and then I can get the book. Easy. So one day when mom was at work, I'm sure someone was supposed to be watching me. I was 5. Yeah, 5. And I hauled everything I could carry out of the house, small knickknacks and little appliances and my toys. And my mom's brand new pink wool dress, and brand new, still had the tag on it. And I priced everything because, like I said, I was very entrepreneurial. I could count money before I could talk almost. And I priced everything, and I had a very successful venture. I remember to this day, I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can tell you I made $13.72 that day.
Nice.
I came home, I ran up to her and I said, look, Mom, we got money. Now can we get the book, right? Problem, solution. She didn't quite see it that way, Bernadette. She was not at all impressed like I thought she should be. I got spanked because I sold all of her stuff and she took my money and I didn't get the book and I had to go back and buy everything back. And fortunately, the adults sold me back the stuff, but the kids didn't sell me back my toys. So I lost most of my toys. So many people would say that wasn't a very successful first venture. But I tell you, I think it was because I learned 3 really important things. One was to go into business with family. Blind kidding, but not really. The second thing was that we can be resourceful and find solutions to our desires, our dreams, our wishes, if we just get really practical about it. And whether you create a side hustle or you do it through your job or you do it with a business, however you do it, that our ingenuity can solve the problems to create us having what we want to be, do, and have. And the third thing that I learned is I remember distinctly when my mom said, "No, we can't afford it." I remember the look of shame and anger and frustration and sadness on her face. And I remember deciding, even though I was only 5 at that moment, that I never wanted to see that look on another person's face, not hers, not mine, not anyone else's. And that became the source of my why, was to support people in creating their yes lives instead of
Right.
no lives. And underneath that was that I wanted people to get that they mattered and they deserved to have a yes life. And why? Well, because I always wanted to matter. I wanted to get on the list. Growing up, I wasn't so much on the list. Everything else came first. And so that became my why and has underlined everything or underlined everything that I've done since then. With personal development facilitation of personal growth courses, or helping entrepreneurs grow their business, or lecturing and teaching in corporate, whatever it is that I've done. Underlying all of that is that I want you to get that you matter and live like you do, so that you have a yes life.
Beautiful. That's awesome. And a great segue. And I love that childhood story. That is fabulous. It's a great segue into our conversation about standing out and really rising as a result of knowing your why. We've talked about it on this program before. However, we have more and more listeners and viewers. And I'm sure not everyone is really understanding what we're talking about when we say know your why. And so could you explain that for them? And then we'll get into some deeper conversations about how to go about identifying it.
Right. And I'm going to tell you a definition that other people don't have. And so it's a different perspective. I believe your why is the intersection of what you're healing from the past and what you long for the future for yourself and others. So what you're healing from the past and what you long for yourself and others for the future. And I think our why is a thread that weaves through the tapestry of our lives. It doesn't change. It's consistent. You can call it what we're investigating for the universe, purpose, whatever. I think the words purpose and mission are often laden and overused. And so that's why I really like to call it your why you do what you do. It doesn't change. Now, your stand, how you express and live into your why, that changes consistently throughout our life. We show up and live into our why in a variety of different ways and roles and different expressions, but the why is consistent. So that's what I call it. And I think it's super important to know what your why is, because it gets us out of bed in the morning, differentiates us, whether that's in the marketplace or in the workplace. It helps us to stand out. It helps us to enroll people in whatever it is that is our vision, our work, or whatever we're doing, because people buy why you do what you do, not what you do.
That's or what you're selling.
Yes. That's
Right.
my friend of the mind, Simon Sinek. He's got a great book on Start With Why. I think it works in corporate, it works in entrepreneurship, it works in your family, it works everywhere.
Right. So let me ask you a question first before we go further into the why. Is you mentioned that it's a both healing and what you want and what you want for others. What is it about the healing part that's in this definition of why? Does someone have to have healing or is it learning and growing? But can you explain the healing part of it?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I believe that all of us at some point in our childhood had something that became what I call a core negative belief, a belief that we carry forward and that it directs a lot of what we do or don't do in the world, how we show up. It's inevitable. It's part of being human. And it's something that if we don't get it healed, it's kind of the end of the thread in a lot of things that don't work in our lives. So whether, you've got some belief around not enough, I'm good enough, not smart enough, whatever that core wound is, it shows up. It stops you from getting a raise at work. It stops you from, going after that person that you really want to have a date with. It stops you from being who you want to be in the world. And so until we get that handled, until we get that conscious and aware and healing on that, it's going to continue to be the thing that undermines a lot of our success. But it's also the thing that I think really creates the frame that we looked at the world through. And so when we reframe that, we tell better stories. Because it's basically a story we made up
Yes.
about ourselves and the world at some point
Right.
based on that thing. So,
Right.
mine was I didn't matter. Okay. And came about through a variety of different things and experiences. Well, if I carry I don't matter into the world, it's going to impact everything and has and does
Mhm.
until that gets remedied or a new story gets written. So that's, I think it's super important. And there isn't a human being alive that doesn't have some version of that going or running, that core negative belief. And, and it gives us our flavor. I call it our note in the choir, the combination of that which we grew up with, both positive and negative. And, I don't actually think any of it's positive or negative. It's just helps us be more effective or less effective, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and that is our unique flavor, our unique perspective on the world, which gives us the unique gifts, talents, skills, abilities that we bring to everything we do. So that's why it's really important to me to know what that is, to lift those anchors so that we're free to sail forward to what we want to create more of.
And I definitely had a core negative story I told myself. I didn't understand it though, or recognize it until I was in my late 40s. And that was, I thought I was adopted. That's a story in itself. And therefore, and I knew it was absurd, but I carried that with me to where I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I was part of a team if I'm not part of my family. I just never felt like I fit. What do you say to individuals who might even be listening and watching who are sitting there going, well, I don't have anything that is causing negativity or positivity in my life. I don't have anything specific that I can identify. What do you say to them? Or how do you help them?
Okay, well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on here, but I would say
Sure.
BS. BS you do have. What you may not know is you may not be aware of it. And you may not have it articulated or identified. And because sometimes it's just too close. It's right on the end of our nose. But we've all gone through stuff that we make up meaning about. Human beings are meaning making machines. So we apply meaning to everything. And sometimes that meaning helps us and sometimes it doesn't. So part of it is getting some help with pulling it back so that you can look at the story that's on the end of your nose and and making a decision. Is that true? Just because it's always been true in my head. And by the way, just because the voice is in your head doesn't mean it's your voice. Could be a parent, could be someone from the past. And so really taking a look at, does this help me be who I want to be or not? And if not, then what am I going to do about it? And if so, how do I capitalize on it? How do I grow that strength? It's really about efficacy. It's really about taking a look. And sometimes we need help with that. So it might be therapists, it might be a coach, it might be doing some personal development work. There's books that can help, but most often it's in the listening of someone who's skilled at hearing longing, who's skilled at hearing the stories and can hold a space for you of that's not the truth of you. That's a story. And let's write a new story. Most of the work that I do is listening for the why and the longing. And so when you can find someone who can help you with that, it helps not only clarify purpose and therefore direction, but also what are the stories that are holding me back and how do I rewrite those? Because you get to be the ones who tells the stories.
That's beautiful. And yes, we all have junk as much as we have where I call them warts and beauty marks,
Yeah.
identifying those warts and healing from it. So that's fabulous. Let's now take this into more of a work environment. And even when it comes to identifying that why, you mentioned a couple of things when it comes to they're asking for a raise or making a presentation, but what is the significance of understanding one's personal why, which often people think is outside the workplace, inside the workplace, in order for it to benefit them and help them rise?
I'm going to answer that on a bunch of different levels. So one is when we have why or sense of purpose or meaning, we are happier, healthier human beings at all ages, especially as we get older. Really important for our psychological, spiritual, mental well-being. Secondly, I think it really does help us define fit. So if you're not happy in a situation or an environment, it could be that your values, your purpose, your inner things that are important to you aren't in alignment with the organization that you're with, the situation that you're with. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave. It just means that you're going to be in a situation where you're constantly kind of pulling against that structure. And that's not necessarily invigorating or supportive. And so you may want to consider, do you want to start looking where there is more alignment? Another thing to do is to be able to use it practically. Like I mentioned before, we enroll people in ideas if we're smart. And whether you call it selling or enrollment or sharing a vision, there's a bunch of different things. But whether you're trying to get people on your team at work to do things with you in a certain way, you want your boss to do something differently, you want to get resources or, like I said, a raise or a promotion, or you want to enroll, your partner in cleaning up around the house or your kids in working harder at school. All of those enrollment conversations need to come from a perspective of, here's why this matters to me. Here's why I think it might matter to you, so that you're coming together on the motivation that really moves us, which is our why. Not what of it, not the how of it, because no one cares about that, but the why. And here's what I think this could look like. Are you willing? A lot of times, and especially I think this is more so women than men, we fail to do the last step. We fail to ask for the agreement and the enrollment in the vision. We'll put it out there and we'll hope that they'll pick it up and run with it. We'll hint, we'll tip, we'll do all of that kind of thing, but we won't actually say, here's what I want. Are you willing to do this in this way by this time?
Right.
Get clear and explicit agreement.
Yes.
So first, enroll in the common why. So that's one way to use your why, or the why of the project, the why of the thing. Now, the other way to use your why is when you're presenting yourself, whether it's like at a networking situation, perhaps you speak as part of your career, or even doing presentations. You can use your why, I call it your Genesis story, as a way for people to get to know you, as a way for you to set the groundwork for your points you're going to make. My Heidi story, the book that I really wanted, is a Genesis story that I use when I'm doing speeches. I use when I'm working. I can tell it in 2 sentences and I can tell it in 15 minutes. And I use it depending, because it's different. It's something that will cut through the noise. It lets people know who you are. It lets them know what you care about. And it instantly creates more rapport than starting with something like when someone says to you at a networking event, what do you do? Oh, I'm a corporate controller, or I'm a speaker and an author and a blah, blah, blah. No one cares. For the love of God, that's not what they're asking you. Answer the question they're asking, which is, what does what you do for me? That's what they want to know.
Yeah.
What does what you do for me? Never, ever, ever again answer the question, what do you do? Because no one cares. They care about why you do it. And so when you answer, let me tell like you can ask your question about it, or you can, which is a great way to network, is to ask questions instead, or to use a stat or a fact. But anything that cuts through the noise and has people glaze over, rather than saying what you do. You can use a Genesis story as a way to create that kind of instant rapport, let people know who you are, give them a sense of flavor, and introduce what you care about. And so as you can see on the screen here, I have a gift for you that we normally will talk about later, but basically it's a complimentary training that helps you craft your Genesis story. You can use it, like I said, in a variety of ways. Have it on your bio, put it in your CV, put it on your About Us page if you've got a website. There's so many ways that you can use it, but it lets people know who you are versus what you do and how you do it.
And what you stand for and what's important to you, and what and how can they help you? And we'll add a how in there, how they can support you in achieving that why, correct?
Yeah. And especially now, Bernadette, we long for connection. There's an epidemic of loneliness right now. And even in places where people are working in busy workplaces and so forth, 1 in 4, and I actually just saw a stat that said 1 in 3 people struggle with mental health issues related to loneliness. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're surrounded by people, you can still be lonely. In fact, sometimes lonelier. And so people may think, but my why is personal. This is business. That's that's too personal. I shouldn't be using that. I got to tell you, I got a completely opposite perspective. Yeah. We need to connect human being to human being. Yep. And get real about the fact that this whole human being is dealing with that whole human being with all of your shadow and light and my BS and my stories and my brilliance. And when we get real like that, we can make so much more progress. We can get so much further. And yes, not every environment supports that. World needs it. So I encourage you to be the source of that.
It's a very sound and popular sales technique too, is to understand their why. Like, what's their agenda? What's this individual's motivation? To get really close to them as far as what's going to emotionally move them to then do business with you. Well, to your point, it's no different when you're in the work environment, trying to engage your team, trying to influence a proposal or a business case to a boss, trying to make a presentation to a board. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that you can engage people and get them to drop out of their head into their heart, the faster you're going to actually make progress when it does come to what you care about, why, and what you want to engage them with. People buy based on emotion and justify with logic. And I don't care if that's buying a car, buying, a dress, or buying your idea or proposal. It's the same thing. So it's really very logical to use your why, to use that personal approach and purpose to, 1, deepen the conversation immediately, 2, to stand out as a result of that, 3, to reach out and engage human being to human being, which fast tracks in most cases. There are environments where that's not okay, but not many these days.
Right.
And there shouldn't be, in my estimation, if I can shit all over the world. And so it fast tracks getting to that real conversation. And that's going to engender more loyalty. It speeds up the know, like, trust factors. There's a lot of benefits to it, not the least of which is we don't have to wear masks. We've been taught to show up with our professional mask and to, never cry in the boardroom and other nonsense like that. That's hurt us. It's hurt us a lot. And especially women, I got to say, because both men and women, I think, really struggle with what's okay, right? Both in my estimation, over political correctness and the fear that it's created, but also just in the whole notion that I have to wear a mask or a facade and be a certain way to be okay.
Right.
That approval issues zaps us of so much of our ability to really, truly contribute and make a difference. I think approval is the worst issue in the universe. It makes us twist ourselves inside out. It gets in the way of our career, of our joy, of our parents.
What do you do when you come up against some individuals that are ready to go into battle as opposed to letting their guards down and showing their true self?
It depends. And the reason it depends is because of a whole bunch of factors, right? What's the relationship? Are you subordinate? Are you their boss, et cetera, et cetera? There is a quote that I often live by or remind myself of or not a quote, but an adage that when two wolves are fighting, if one wolf rolls over and exposes its throat and is vulnerable, the other wolf will stand down. I have found quite often in situations where there is a whole bunch of alpha stuff going on that if I expose my vulnerability, other people will de-escalate the aggression. Now, not always. And sometimes that can work against you. And particularly if you've got a lot of gender politics going on in your workplace, right? So So you take that with a grain of salt, but keep in mind that there are times where that is the case. And often in interpersonal connections, whether it's your primary relationship or one-on-one with people, that's often the case. So that's one answer to that. The other answer to that is to one of the questions I like to ask in general in my life to keep me grounded in who I want to be, because I can't change that, but I can maintain this, is a question that might seem counterintuitive to a lot of people in terms of an answer about how to be in corporate. And that is, what would love do? What would love do now gets me to think of who do I want to be and how do I contribute to this in a way that's going to be generative, positive, supportive as much as possible. Because that can take me out of my own reactions and triggerings and so forth. Okay. So that's another thing. The other thing that I would say is to really just assess. You want to check, am I safe? If you're not safe, then it's not always wise to de-armor. But if you're in situations constantly where you have to wear armor, you got to ask yourself, is this how I want to spend my next 10, 20, 30 years, or even one more minute? Like, seriously, we only have one precious life. We never know when it's going to end. Why spend it being defensive when what you can do is spend it sharing your gifts, your joy, who you are, and having more fun on the journey?
Right.
Every day is a joy, but for the love of God, we don't have time to waste on being in toxic environments.
No, we do not. No, we do not. Someone identifies their why.
Mm-hmm.
They're feeling really good and energetic and confident because now they can make decisions faster. They can really know what, they're going to enjoy and what they're not going to enjoy. How does one go about then when they're not necessarily storytellers? Because that's what I'm told a lot from my clients is I'm not a storyteller.
Yeah.
How can they go about becoming a storyteller to make all of that rich information they just learned about themselves powerful?
So one, it's a valuable skill. It is part of our humanity. From time immemorial, people sat around fires and told stories as a way to maintain connection, culture, and to move things forward, to teach, to educate. And so I think it's a valuable skill. So that's one thing I would say is learn. Two, if you're not a good storyteller, then part of the thing that I would encourage is, and by the way, stories don't have to only be personal. I tell stories about the benefits of what to do, why to do this strategy, and what's in it for the boss in terms of retention. And wouldn't it be nice if you were in a situation where you weren't lying awake wondering whether or not your staff was going to show up tomorrow and do what you hoped they were doing? That's a story.
Right.
How paint a picture. If you're not thinking of it as a story, paint a picture. Describe something that you want. Focus on the benefits versus the features of whatever you're discussing. So the benefits are what's in it for them versus the features. Now that, if you're a salesperson listening, you've heard that a million times. I can pretty much guarantee that you still talk about features all the time because that's what we do. I guarantee if I go to your website, it's all features based, not benefit. But the more you talk about and learn how to get good at talking about benefits versus features, even if you're not using them in stories, even if you're just using it in your presentations or how you talk to people about your project or the work you've done, you're going to be further ahead because you're speaking into their listening of what they care about, which is what's in it for me. Right. So even if you can't tell a story, shift to talking about benefits. That will help you be a better communicator and a better influencer in terms of getting what you want.
Well, because a lot of so-called leaders out there, they are still focused very much so on the how. Yeah. How are you going to get it done? How are you going to actually do it? How is it going to, yes, impact me, but more so based on the how. Yes. And then to your point, what you want to talk about is, what is this going to do to our employees? What is it going to do for our clients? How is it going to change their lives? How is it going to change our business? Correct?
Well, and really that comes down to why does this matter? And the more, the Simon Sinek has a brilliant, speaking of leaders, TED Talk on leadership, probably one of the most watched in the world. And it's on leadership, but it's actually the 17 best minutes on marketing that you could ever watch. And he talks about the golden circle of why, how, and what. And really what that goes from is motivation, benefits, feature. It correlates a lot in a lot of different ways. But if you aspire to be a leader, and I don't care if you're, the secretary or the receptionist or whatever, you're a leader. If you take on that role and position, then coming from why deepens the conversation, but it also deepens your motivation and the engagement and is more effective in connecting with people. And recognize that the old notion of let's focus on the what and or the how doesn't create inspired workplaces. If you look at the companies that have been very successful, risen, et cetera, Apple has a clear culture and a clear why, right? We are the what weird ones or the unusual ones. That's their culture. If you look at any organization highly successful, they have a strong why, and that's why people stay. That's why their culture works. Yes, they attend to the hows and the whats. But if you look at any organization that doesn't have a strong, clearly articulated, bought into why, I can guarantee you they have more turnover. I guarantee you they have a less functional and productive workplace. It's proven scientifically.
I will make sure, everyone, that I find that Simon Sinek video, and I will post the link in with our show notes as well as on our social posts. So thank you for that, because that's a great resource for any, professional, whether you're a manager, you're a high potential, or you're a leader. So Jannette, what would you say now that people understand asking themselves about their why is important and how to go about doing it and what the impact is to themselves and those around them? What would be the number one thing you would suggest that they do walking away from this discussion?
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay, I thought you were going to say to determine their why. So one is get some help with determining your why, because it's often very challenging to do on our own. Like I said, it's, the hand on the end of our nose. So get some support with that. The second thing that I would say is what's really beneficial in our lives is to pause once in a while, pull up, and to create a vivid vision of who we want to be, what we want to do, and what we want to have in the future. And especially because, we're kind of getting close to the end of the year, beginning of the new year, et cetera. Often people think of doing it at that time, but I think you do it every weekend if you want, but really to pause and think, who do I want to be in the world? And to then craft that vision vividly, viscerally, write out everything as if it is exactly the way you want, and then start working towards creating that. We only live life by design when we get intentional about creating that rather than by living by default. And right. I don't care if you're an entrepreneur, unemployed, in distress, or on top of the world. It serves us to choose and to choose again and to choose again and to get in the driver's seat of our lives, because right. Yet we can truly be the difference that only we can be in the world.
And I want to add, not only living by default, but also living by someone else's goals, someone else's desires, as opposed to your own.
Yes, exactly.
Love that. Jannette, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much. And I do want to remind everyone, please go out to maturepreneur.world to learn more about what Jannette is doing and how to go about engaging with her. Follow her on Facebook at Maturepreneur World. And also, where she mentioned her Genesis story training, you can go to bodacity.ca/Genesis-story. That's bodacity.ca/Genesis-story. We will have all of these links and ways that you can reach Jannette with the show notes and with all of our social posts. Jannette, thank you so much. This has been fabulous.
Thank you, Bernadette. And I love that you are a stand for having really honest conversations around how do we create workplaces that work? How do we tell the truth around what could be and what we want, and that you're a real stand for people being able to create happy, healthy lives. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. What a powerhouse of a conversation with Jannette Anderson of Maturepreneur World, all around your why. Do you know what it is? And if you don't, that's okay. Do you have clarity around how to go about identifying it for yourself? Looking, as she said, in the mirror to really understand who you are and what you stand for. I know I do, even more so, regardless of the fact that I've worked on my why probably for the last 15 years. I got new understanding and even new tips and strategies for going about redefining and ensuring that it still stands up today. I hope you got that same clarity and understanding, and you were able to walk away with really seeing your why as that healing converging with your purpose. That in itself was very transformative for me, is understanding that your why is an integration of both healing and your purpose, your future purpose, what you stand for now. So I am thrilled that Jannette was here to share all of that with us. I would love your thoughts around today's conversation. You can always link in with me at Bernadette Boas and send me a DM. And if there's any questions that you have for Jannette, I'll make sure we get them over to her. At the same time, if you are in any way, shape, or form just trying to figure out how to be the best powerhouse leader and most effective for your team, your business, and yourself, then be sure to reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Complimentary 30 minutes where I can share tips and strategies and maybe provide you some next steps you can be taken so you are that powerhouse. So go to coachmebernadette.com/discovery call and let's have a conversation. Lastly, if you've missed any of our episodes, you can always go to balloffirecoaching.com/podcast and you'll find them all there. Thank you for being part of this episode, and I'll look forward to having you for another episode of Shedding the Corporate Bitch.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Shedding the Corporate Bitch. Every journey taken together is another step towards unleashing the powerhouse leader within you. Don't miss any of our weekly episodes. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you love to listen. And for those who thrive on visual content, catch us on our Shedding the Bitch YouTube channel. Want to dive deeper with Bernadette on becoming a powerhouse leader? Visit balloffirecoaching.com to learn more about how she helps professionals, HR executives, and team leaders elevate overall team performance. You've been listening to Shedding the Corporate Bitch with Bernadette Boas. Until next time, keep shedding, keep growing, and keep leading.